Hi guys, JJ Ainsworth here. I'm also known as Megalithic Maiden, and I'm going to be talking about some of my all-time favorite sites. They are the Tas Tepeler sites of ancient Anatolia, mainly the Şanlıurfa province of Turkey, and I want to talk about how I believe the ancient people there were astronomers. What you're looking at here is a Tas Tepeler site located in Şanlıurfa that is more than 11,400 years old. Karahan Tepe is where Hugh Newman and myself discovered the oldest known artificially created winter solstice alignment. And that was back in December 2021. And what you see in front of you is the AB pit. The little blade of light on the left side of the head is what we saw in December 2021, and we were amazed by it and its implications. So this is just an illustration of what the light had to traverse through to reach the head to make the little blade on the side. And in blue here, it's highlighting the porthole stone. If you're interested, this is just a time lapse of the movement of the sun across the face from the winter solstice, December 2021. This is a lecture I gave in 2024, and I find that a lot of people have problems with astronomy and archaeoastronomy, and maybe that just has to do with the way I explain it, but I'm going to give this lecture another go. So I'm going to discuss a bit of astronomy. The ecliptic, marked in red, is the invisible plane containing the Earth's orbit around the sun, and from the view of an observer on Earth, the sun's movement around the celestial sphere over the course of a year marks out a path along the ecliptic against a background of stars. Eventually, you will see that the ecliptic passes through the constellations of the zodiac. The path of the sun passes through 13 background constellations, which are called the ecliptic constellations. 12 of them, except for Ophiuchus, are also called the zodiac constellations. The moon and planets also travel close along this virtual line of the ecliptic. Why is that important? Well, the ancients were able to predict when eclipses would occur by paying attention to the movement of bodies along the ecliptic. They track the sun across the sky, marking its northern and southernmost points. And with this information and tools, they could accurately predict equinoxes, solstices, and seasons. And they used this information to build calendars like Stonehenge. I'm going to mention some celestial objects in the sky and their possible importance to the ancients. Okay, so I'm going to hop over to another Tas Tepeler site in Şanlıurfa, Turkey. And this site is called Gobekli Tepe, and the image in front of you is showing enclosure D. Now, as of this moment, it is the oldest enclosure located at the site, and there is so much symbolism here. Enclosure D is about 61.2 feet by 41.3 feet, if you're interested. When I first viewed Gobekli Tepe, specifically Enclosure D with the central giant twin pillars, I immediately thought of the ancient stories. Many of these stories included a set of ancient giant primordial twins, and I can imagine being sat near one of these ancient circles with fires roaring to keep us warm, all the while we sat under the night sky full of the very brightest of stars, and listened to one of our elder and wizened storytellers tell the tale of the great primordial twins. And these bright stars we are sat under are the very ones that I think the story was teaching us about. Okay, we're going to get into some of the specific symbolism in Enclosure D on pillars 18 and 31. These are the central twin pillars. Around the neck of pillar 18, it shows a sort of H-like symbol, circled in red. But more likely, it is two beings holding hands, and I postulate that this is the constellation of Gemini. Since all planets, as well as the sun and moon, shown in red, always move very close along the virtual line of the ecliptic, all these orbiting bodies are regularly passing through a special asterism, which I'll speak about soon, and which the builders of Gobekli seem not just to know about, but to precisely pinpoint with their symbolism. Still discussing Pillar 18, in the crook of the arm of the anthropomorphic pillar, it holds a canid, a fox or a dog. So let's look at what is next to Gemini in the night sky. Well, you can easily note that it's Canis Minor, which today is known as a dog. In ancient times, the constellation may have been seen as a fox, and that's not really an issue as both are canids. I know sometimes people get hung up on the smallest of details, which, sometimes they really don't matter. The symbolism found at the base of the same pillar shows 7 water birds or chicks of some sort. In my opinion, the 7 birds on the bottom of this pillar is the Pleiades star cluster in the constellation of Taurus. This cluster is commonly known as the 7 sisters, the 7 chicks, and almost always classified as female. In fact, some of the oldest known stories about the Pleiades come from the Aboriginal Australians. In there too, they were often known as the 7 sisters. So for Twin Pillar 18, I hope the symbolism makes sense to you and you can see the matching symbolism to the mentioned constellations. But I'll bring it all together in the end so you can kind of grasp what I'm speaking about. So the symbolism on Pillar 18 that our ancestors left behind is pointing to here in the night sky. And this is an image from about 9400 BC during the winter solstice in the northern hemisphere. So the other central pillar in enclosure D is Pillar 31, and on its necklace there is a pendant of a bull. I think this T-pillar is representing Orion, the mighty hunter, and Taurus, the bull. And as you can see in the constellation image, Orion is right there next to Taurus, the bull. If we went further back in time, we might call Orion Manus or Manu. He, in the form of a priest, taught humans how to slay a bull for sacrifice to the gods. Kind of like what is being portrayed in this Mithraic image. This is another image from Stellarium dating to 9400 BC, and it gives you another pretty decent image of what you could have seen in the night sky, and you see Orion and Taurus. If you were at Gobekli Tepe at about 9400 BC, and you are standing between the central pillars of enclosure D, staring south the same way the pillars are facing as the sun rises on the winter solstice, you would see it being heralded by the Pleiades in Taurus. You would also see the direction in the sky where the virtual ecliptic line passes through Taurus and Gemini. This is important because in studying the ecliptic line over time, you will see all the movements of the planets, the moon, and the sun, and you can record this information, thus allowing you to predict their behaviors in the future. And with Orion and his eye-catching 3-starred belt right there, this makes for an easy-to-find astronomical observation point. What I also noticed that's very interesting in that particular area is that it is a crossing point for the Milky Way and the ecliptic line. You can see that they intersect between these specific constellations, and the YX marks this intersection. The ancient Greeks believed that souls reside in the Milky Way between incarnations, and that there were 2 gates on the Milky Way. One being the intersection between Scorpio and Sagittarius, where Ophiuchus resides, and that is known as the Sagittarius Gate or the Golden Gate. On the opposite side, at about 180 degrees, is the Silver Gate, also known as the Gate of Man, which is the intersection between Taurus and Gemini, near the constellation of Orion. Okay, this is where it might get confusing for some people. I've been staying in the same part of the sky and I'm still there. And so just to confuse you more, I'm going to be describing the Golden Gate of the ecliptic. It lies within the Silver Gate of Gemini, Canis Minor, Orion, and Taurus. Not to be confused with the Golden and Silver Gates previously mentioned. So what I'm speaking about now, just to reiterate, is called the Golden Gate of the ecliptic, not the Golden Gate, not the Silver Gate, but the Golden Gate of the ecliptic. An asterism is a pattern of stars that is not a constellation, but can lie within a constellation. The Golden Gate of the ecliptic asterism is in the constellation of Taurus and has been known about for several thousand years. It's marked by the two gold stars above. The asterism is built by the two eye-catching open star clusters of the Pleiades and the V-shaped Hyades that stand as sentinels on either side of the ecliptic line, the perfect point for astronomical observations of the celestial bodies. This is another example of ancient astronomers marking the Golden Gate of the ecliptic. This limestone tablet was found at a site in Malta called Tal Kadi, which is roughly 4,500 years old. Today, this site is just in ruins. The top image is the Tal Kadi sky tablet matched to the starry sky, with the ecliptic line showing Taurus prominently. And the below image is an example of how the Tal Kadi sky tablet may have been used to measure the ecliptic latitude of the moon and planets. The same asterism may be portrayed in the cave of La Tête du Lion, and it is dated to the Lower Solutrean epoch. So it is possible that I'm correct in saying the symbolism in enclosure D is pinpointing the Golden Gate of the ecliptic asterism, because it was known possibly at least 10,000 years before the time of the known creation of the Tas Tepeler sites. If I'm correct about the previous information, then we really need to rethink how we look at ancient sites, and it's going to change so much stuff. I mean, it's just unbelievable. My next video is going to be covering Pillar 43, also known as the Vulture Stone. It is a pillar inside Gobekli Tepe's enclosure D. We're going to discuss some of the symbolism and what I think it might mean. So thank you guys. If you're supporting me on Patreon or following me on any social medias, thank you guys very much, and until next time.